If you're new around here, you should be aware that I have spent a lot of time fantasizing quite publicly and passionately about an official Sonos home theater configuration with wide front and back separation. Up until now, I have been cosplaying with an ARC soundbar, either one with 2 Era 300s and 2 subs. So a maxed out ARC system grouped with another Era 300 stereo pair up front. A sub can be added to that stereo pair if you're feeling spicy. The result, equal dose fun and mischief, obviously not ideal as the stereo plays redundantly with the ARC system, but at the very least, it hints at a more open, satisfying sound Sonos could tap into. Well, recently I was told to go check out the iOS app, Sonosequencr, that I was told can officially integrate 2 extra front speakers into a Sonos home theater pairing, which is exactly what I've been trying to do. A Christmas miracle. In my last video, I showed off how with the Sonosequencr, the left speaker plays left stuff, the center channel does dialogue, and the right speaker plays right stuff. Proof of a breakthrough. Not gonna hide the ball, Sonosequencr transforms the sound, and I think there is a decent argument that it's the root for peak Sonos home theater at this very moment. But, for all those thinking, what we got here is a straight up cheap alternative to Pinewood and its hypothesized home theater expanding capabilities. Well, you're partially right, but through my unparalleled research efforts, it has become quite clear that there are refinement opportunities, particularly with the newest Sonos speakers, that we will be relying on Sonos to execute. The Sonosequencr developer, who has been generous in offering up information, did not create new capabilities from scratch. Rather, he tapped into an existing capability, one that apparently went through a beta test that was eventually shut down but left latent in the network. I had a deep suspicion that this was the case, given the way the official Sonos app recognizes the 2 extra front speakers. So any updates in this arena is 99.9% going to be Sonos. Maybe there are future betas that Sequencer can tap into, but I would not count on that. Okay, so why didn't the beta turn into a real feature? I identified all the possibilities. Sonos was either too overwhelmed by the power it discovered and is hiding it like alien technology, waiting for humanity to catch up. They wanted to monetize the capability. Maybe they were unhappy with the result. Perhaps they needed more time to get it right. Maybe a combination of all these things. In any case, expect a podcast about it with The Verge. Some interesting facts about your new beta 7-piece setup. Dolby Atmos still shows up and now playing. You can true play, which seems to help a bit. They didn't add any specific left-right volume controls for the new speakers. 5 channel sources separates dialogue. 2 channel sources like AirPlay Music does not, so you get voice in the left, center, and right. Safety message. I've been able to recover speakers without a factory reset when disassembling this beta pairing. I recommend breaking it apart through the official Sonos app. The speakers will disappear and show up again after about 3 minutes. A factory reset will bring them back too if all else fails. But for some comfort, removal was an official part of the Sonos beta. To really try to understand how this super classified latent beta capability works, I tried out 2 systems. The first one, the original ARC, 2 Era 100s and 2 Symfonisk speaker frames. My second configuration was the setup I paraded around a few videos ago, minus 1 sub. So ARC Ultra, 4 Era 300s, and 2 sub 4s. The max Sonosequencr can manage. Okay, still gonna point out that Sonosequencr is primarily a Sonos automator. Not gonna really dig into that functionality, but I'll give you one example of what an automation might look like.
How can I move on when I don't even remember making
Okay, to get your non-sanctioned system up and running, I would first unpair everything you want to use in the Sonos app. Get all the components as singles. If you're opening the Sonosequencr app for the first time, you get about 5 permissions you need to work through. Then you get a page with a lot of text. Just select the top option. Name your system or environment home or Roam or Valhalla, whatever. Your Sonos device list should load. I'd look to make sure that all the speakers you want to put together are listed. If not, wait a bit longer, perhaps if you recently unpaired your ARC system. Don't worry about saving examples, just press no, then select the soundbar you want to build your system around. So yes, choose a soundbar like the ARC Ultra, then in this control screen, press the config button down here and you will get this configuration interface. The next steps are actually quite obvious. Select each speaker location and choose the speaker you want to go in that location. After, say, selecting the front two, I would press apply, let it do its 45-second setup, then go to the Sonos app and see if the 2 front speakers start popping up in settings. One oddity is it's very likely that the speakers you add will not show up as pictures in the Sonosequencr configuration screen, particularly the front speakers, making it look like it's not working. Let the real Sonos app be your reality check on what got added. Another oddity, I noticed that if I added the fronts in Sequencer and then added the rears in the Sonos app, they could get added but then would quickly disappear from the soundbar pairing and show up as a separate stereo pair. So put the whole system together through Sequencer. If you just want to play with the soundbar and 2 speakers up front, have at it. If you want to go further and add 2 rear speakers and subs, well, at that point you have a very special, not officially sanctioned Max Sonos home theater system. Once the speakers are added in the Sonos app, you don't need the Sequencer app anymore for it to continue to work. I conducted a 5.1.4 and a 7.1.4 channel test to determine exactly how Sonos separates the channels, especially in the front. With the original ARC system, it played as 5.0 with the left being straight left, the right being straight right, the soundbar just the center channel, and rears just rears, so normality. Yippee. But man, Sonos strips the ARC of all its channels except center, which is 3 drivers of the 11 total. The second setup, the ARC Ultra pairing, is a 5.1.4 channel system. The best I can tell, I don't think the beta trial was designed for this hardware. The added front Era 300s are treated as single channels, left and right. Upward firing drivers on these 300s were turned off, the best I could tell. The ARC Ultra's side firing drivers were turned off. The weirdest thing I found was that surround channels activated the ARC Ultra's respective left and right channel. So if I instruct the system to play left rear channel, the ARC Ultra's left channel plays and both sides of the left rear Era 300 plays. The front is still muted. It's the same result if it's side surround or rear surround, as discovered in the 7.x channel test. For height channels, the ARC Ultra plays the front height, and for rear height, well, the ARC Ultra played in those instances too, but so did the rear Era 300s. Just the messenger, so seemingly some unnecessary, unhelpful redundancy that I thought I was escaping. Okay, the sound on the ARC. Yes, a clean 5.0 channel system. The Era 100s as dedicated right and left is transformative, exactly as you would expect it to be. Just a far more open sound that brings a thrill the ARC alone cannot. Each detail far more isolated. Forward and sideways directional effects were exaggerated, more impactful. Overall, I'd say there's less meat than a normal ARC system. because of the removal of so many soundbar drivers. So it made the overall sound less full or sultry or muddy if you're that person. But a soundbar system, I guess, still, with this much space and breadth holds a serious kind of charm. Music. When playing a stereo source, as I mentioned, left and right play as stereo and center as mono redundantly. And the rear plays a stereo as well, even if you set it to ambient, also redundant. Otherwise, the same themes with music as with cinema. More detail and a clearer sense of left and right imaging. Okay, so what about the newer Arc Ultra setup? Even with the goofiness I mentioned, I'm going to put 95% of my chips on this setup being peak possible Sonos home theater. It could be that putting 5s in the front would be better, but what I have here is better than any Arc system alone or my previous attempts to add wide front separation with a separate stereo system. The first words that came to mind, clean and space. I say clean because, as it turns out, spoiler alert, when you have two redundant systems, it's gonna sound a bit more crowded than a single system with each playing its own part, mostly in this case, even if it's the same number of speakers. It definitely leans modern, emphasizing highs and lows far more than you would get with, say, an Arc with Sonos One's system circa 2020. I got a unique heightened experience in my normal tryout movies, so Six Underground, Blade Runner 2049, Transformers, pick one. Hearing all that crazy shit come at me from a wider angle. I felt far more encompassed, though I had my highlight experience just watching the new Apple TV Plus The Gorge movie and just kind of getting to experience the expanse with the atmospherics, wind, birds, leaves blowing with the more spacious system. I really enjoyed the accents of whizzing gunshots, rockets, ziplining, funny-looking drones, and the plant animal people crawling up the side, spoiler alert. The benefits of a left and right speaker are more pronounced with this Sonosequencr app than with my silly illegal systems. The left and right and front and back motion effects are really most transformed when you start adding that front separation. These effects never sounded better on Sonos and will be really hard to forget when reviewing other soundbars without this advantage, but I've had this hang up ever since the A9s. But I think Sonos customers will appreciate the dedicated center channel that is not included with the A9 or Quad. Where the sound takes the biggest step back relative to my recent Sonos experiences, and it's a big deal, is the height effects. Maybe it was that they were playing in front when they shouldn't, which would water down the motion effects, but the biggest offender is not playing height out of the front 300s, rather putting that role solely on the bar, which reduces separation and breaks the front-back symmetry, with the horizontal effects being made so much more prominent and defined, and height motion being made less prominent, less crisp than my last reference point. I'll admit it was a bit deflating and something I look forward to Sonos improving. All right, gonna wrap this up with some more brilliant thoughts. I think we have all somewhat trivialized the difficulty in taking Sonos speakers and turning them into a 5.xx and 7.x whatever channel system, especially when talking the Arc Ultra and Era 300s. Just taking the Arc 5.0 channel example, which to its credit was clean, involved neutering the Arc and buying $400 to $500 more speaker, the Era 100s, and giving up height effects and losing the front surround channel. It's not that this is impossible, but it's just probably more difficult to deliver with true professionalism than might be immediately apparent. My sense is that with speakers that are perhaps not specifically designed for this purpose, allowing a Play 5 to be center and treating other speakers as 1.0 channel or 1.0.1 channels, whether Aero 100s or 300s, is a good place to start. I think the 7.x channel systems in this rubric should involve at least 7 speakers, not including subs, and allow the crazies who have clearly exerted their domestic dominance or are as single as it gets to put the speakers all around them in the living room, as opposed to trying to cram surround channels on the sides of speakers. Making soundbars fit into this scheme feels particularly forced and like a poor use of money, because a cheaper speaker, more well suited for the center task, is available, like the Sonos 5. I suppose Sonos could try distributing the center in some creative way between the front soundbar channels to keep more of the soundbar drivers active. I also think while soundbars are not optimal for this task, it could be that customers would like to reuse older soundbars, so I hope they keep that option open. Anyway, if you have some extra Sonos speakers laying around to try out, I would certainly buy the Sonosequencr app to explore. $3 is an acceptable risk in this case. Alrighty, I'll be keeping an eye on all of this. I'm still waiting for Pinewood and all of its possibilities, as well as the Samsung Q990F with the 2 front music frames, the Klipsch Flexus Core 300 with Dirac room correction, and the new Nakamichi Shockwave that looks built to give at least the Bass Dragon a really hard time. If you're looking for these kind of reviews as they roll out this year, you should probably commit. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.
Oh, Sonosequencr, you light up my night. Turn my living room into pure Dolby delight. You're not just tech, you're my musical spark. You don't just sequence my system, you sequence my heart. Every movie's a journey, every song's